Hey K-popers, and welcome back to Hallyu. Today we're going to be taking a look at foreign K-pop groups and why they may never find mainstream success. We'll start by reviewing 3 recent foreign groups that had less than stellar results and talk about some big barriers to success that they have. Then we'll see why even in Korea there's still some serious headwinds that an international group would face, and finally we'll consider what success actually means for a foreign group and why I don't think we'll ever see it unless there's some big changes made soon. Before we get started, I want to quickly thank Hallyu's honorary producers. If you want to show off your bias group in every video, have your say in future content in the channel, and join the official Hallyu Discord server, come support Hallyu on Patreon and join our wonderful community. So let's start off by taking a look at 3 examples of foreign groups of varying degrees and see how they fared in the competitive world of K-pop. First up is Prisma, who are a 5-member girl group under Union Wave Entertainment. Prisma's original roster was composed of Chaerin, Gyeongmin, Najung, Nia, and Miriam, but they had multiple shakeups before their debut even happened. On June 8, 2020, Chaerin left the group and was replaced 2 weeks later by a new member, Sally. Similarly, on August 24th, Najung left Prisma due to health concerns and another new member, Eunbil, replaced her. After those roster changes, Prisma made their debut on October 31st last year with the song Breakout, which was a digital single with no physical album. Just from a purely technical standpoint, there were some noticeable issues with the MV. Many sections look excessively choppy because they slowed down footage that wasn't originally shot at a high frame rate, and worse than that, the audio is obviously mistimed in some scenes like this one. So as you can imagine, the debut did not go so well, as the MV for Breakout only has a combined 875,000 views, and the group only has about 2,700 monthly listeners on Spotify. What's more surprising to me though is the lack of content that was released for the group. On Prisma's official YouTube channel, there are only 3 videos uploaded: the MV, a performance version, and a dance tutorial by one of the members. And the story isn't any different on the label's official channel either. Only 3 behind the scenes videos are there in terms of extra content for the group since their debut. Judging from the lack of social media activity, Prisma has already quietly disbanded after just a few months. Now let's take a look at Kaachi, who are a 4-member girl group based out of London, England, but branding themselves as a K-pop group. Like with Prisma, Kaachi had some member changes very early on. One member, KG, left for health reasons and was replaced by Miso. Miso herself later left for her own personal reasons though, being replaced by Coco. Kaachi debuted with the song Your Turn in April of last year and has since released another single called Photo Magic. These MVs actually have some decent view counts into the millions, but it's safe to say that these are not all fans watching. I mean, the dislike bar was hidden for their debut, and on Photo Magic the dislike ratio is certainly not flattering. And Kaachi faced a lot of backlash upon debuting because, as you can see, there's a huge gap in quality between K-pop groups and Kaachi's MV. The video quality itself is just not there. You can tell they didn't have time to plan out their lighting and exposure in a lot of the shots, and the dancing's just not as sharp or in sync as it is with K-pop groups. This exacerbated the controversy surrounding their debut, as the girls were criticized for their skill levels, particularly those not of Korean heritage who were accused of getting into the group easier because they are themselves big fans of K-pop. Now, I should note that they are still releasing extra content somewhat regularly, but clearly there has not been much going for the group. And the third and final group I want to briefly talk about is Yuhak Sonya, or UHSN for short, which by the way literally means a girl studying abroad. Now, this 10-member girl group was actually formed in an Mnet reality show of the same name, and the contestants were from all over the world in places like Russia, America, Ukraine, Sweden, Egypt, and more. The show basically followed these girls' journey in Korea as they discover its culture and its history while going through the trainee process. The show aired 9 episodes in total, and on the 7th episode the girls released a music video called Popsicle. And frankly, though this was basically the result of only 2 months of work, to me it looks the most similar to K-pop of the 3 groups, which I guess makes sense of course given this was put together by Mnet and released on Stone Music's channel. Nevertheless, this girl group was still a one-time thing and nothing further came from the show. So it's pretty clear that foreign K-pop groups are generally not remotely successful, but why is that? It's an interesting question because international members are actually extremely common in K-pop groups as we know, even in the ultra successful ones. The J-Line and Twice, 17 members like Joshua, Blackpink's Lisa, and Rosé, just to name a few. And that makes the first big barrier pretty obvious, that being the geography. With Kaachi, for example, they're trying to be a K-pop group while being based out of London. So not only does that mean that you're not in the domestic scene, which we'll get to lots more shortly, but you're also dealing with a music label that's not remotely affiliated with any Korean labels. Let's be frank about it, modern K-pop is extremely refined, not just in terms of the talent and music, but in the management, promotion, reality and radio gigs, concerts, and more. The bar is set really high, and if you're a Western company not used to that level of quality, you're simply not going to produce a product that's comparable. In a foreign label, the trainee selection process will probably be more lenient. The trainee schedule will probably be more lax and perhaps not as well constructed as those in Korea as well. The label won't be very familiar with that level of video production, nor will they have the connections to those other companies who are experienced in producing K-pop MVs for labels. And frankly, they likely won't have the upfront capital to afford a high budget debut that might actually land them some traction if they did it well. And this is why we see international members but not international groups, because essentially what's happening is the talented individual is moving to Korea and being adopted into the label, the culture, and the domestic K-pop scene. So for international members, the only barriers that exist are personal, them adjusting to any culture shock and to the rigorous training schedules. Now there's another big obstacle for a foreign group to overcome too, even if they got lots of talent and a really high budget. And that is the struggle of being able to keep up and be accepted into the domestic K-pop scene. For those of you who may not know, South Korea is an extremely homogenous society, and many subsets of the population want it to stay that way. In fact, as of December 2019, only 2.5 million people living in South Korea were not of Korean descent, representing only about 4.9% of the population. So if you were to meet 20 different people on the streets of Seoul, 19 of them would be of Korean ethnicity. This makes it a lot harder for a group from a foreign country to succeed because you have to overcome that perception of non-Koreans that's so prevalent in society. And to take that to the extreme, there's also the risk of crossing the line into cultural appropriation, which was one of the allegations thrown Kaachi's way on their debut. And this issue is compounded by the fact that you really do need to win over the Korean fans to succeed. Physical album sales, music show wins, real-time charting success, they all depend on a big chunk of the public who listens to K-pop supporting your group in particular. But that actually brings up a really interesting question. What does success mean? For us as K-pop fans, we often resort to a few big metrics to know if a group is being successful. There's charting, which includes things like perfect all kills, there's physical sales totals and pre-order totals, and of course bringing it together, music show wins. There's also SNS and online reception, including music video views for a debut and a comeback on YouTube. And of course there's the ancillary promotional activities like in-person fan signs and showcases, radio spots, appearances on shows like Weekly Idol or Knowing Bros, and more. But for an international K-pop group, should that be the goal? It seems like for the most part, foreign K-pop groups have stayed in their own respective countries to promote from there. But their big problem with this is that their only path to making it big is to either become a local sensation in their own area or break into the international fan market. And that is very unlikely to happen because K-pop groups are already doing so much online. Aside from in-person showcases and concerts, as well as maybe some late nights staying up for premieres, international fans aren't really missing out on much from their K-pop groups by not being in Korea. So that means that a foreign group like Prisma or Kaachi would need to be as good as or even better than other K-pop groups, and as we've seen, there's a huge gap in skill level and production quality there right now. So to me, the only possible way that a foreign group would have a fighting chance is to actually make Korea their home base and work to get into the domestic scene while still doing lots of online content. But as we've talked about already, there's a lot of headwinds even just doing that because of the culture in Korea. So for better or for worse, in my view, we're not going to see a foreign K-pop group have significant and sustained success unless a lot of things change in Korea and abroad. But I want to hear what you guys think. Are there some other important factors that you might think sway foreign groups one way or the other? Let me know what you think down in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching this deep dive, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss all the great K-pop content coming your way every week here at Hallyu. This has been Deep Dive number 55, Foreign K-pop Groups.